So as most of you will be aware, and don't worry if you're not, all of the lessons come from the textbook, so you're not missing out on anything, okay? It's all there. We have been looking at response writing, also known as directed writing, okay? And this is the kind of thing that you will encounter in paper 2 and paper 3 questions, in directed response questions, and in close reading questions, okay? Where there's comprehension, etc. I'm just going to make sure we have the chat box open in case you want to start asking questions at some point during the lesson. And so far we have looked at a book review in a newspaper. We have looked at, what did we look at last week? I've already forgotten. Oh, we looked at journal writing. We looked at Scott's journey to the Antarctic and his experiences that he recounts in his journal. And today we're going to look at magazine and blog articles. So before we get going with that, I just want to remind you, as I always do, that what is response writing or directed writing? Well, it's also known as reworking a given text into a different style using your own words. Okay, so this is on page 10 or 11 of your textbook, depending on which edition you have. And the key, oh, sorry, I've gone up too far. The key point here is that directed writing or response to reading tasks are those which ask you to use material in a text in a specified way. They usually require modification of the structure and style of the original passage, so you need to change vocabulary, sentence structures, and text structure, rather than simply listing points from the passage in the same order and using the same words. So if you're given a newspaper article and they ask you to change it into a letter, that's what you'd have to do. That's the kind of thing that you would do in directed writing or response to reading tasks. Sorry for those of you who have heard this 1,000 times already, but it's just nice to have a little recap. So, like I said, today we are going to look at blogs versus magazine articles. What is the difference? Can anybody tell me what the difference is? Any suggestions? Do any of you follow blogs? Do any of you write blogs? Do any of you write magazine articles? I'm sure you read magazine articles. Let's have a look. Anybody know what the difference is? What a blog is? What is a blog? I'm sure if I could hear you all right now, I'd hear the tapping of Google searches. A blog is more personal. Yes, good, absolutely. A blog is from a more personal perspective. If we look at these images here, we can see a man sitting behind his laptop and all these ideas going on around him. Here's a lady with a face mask on her face, and the writing here says, my beauty blog. All right, there's a new post, there's somebody saying hello guys, there's somebody with a present going giveaway, hashtag follow, message. All of these are giving me hints. Oh good, okay, so here we go. Some nice answers coming through. Blogs are less informal, and they're actually more informal than magazine articles. Good. A blog is where someone gives their personal opinion about an event. Absolutely. Blogs are personal information, and magazines are based more on facts. Yes, that's true. There is a bit of factuality to magazine articles. They would have to be researched and double-checked. And oh yeah, so sorry, there's a blog is where someone gives their personal opinion about an event or a thing, something that interests them. So it doesn't have to be about an event. Very nice answers, guys. Good, good, good. Okay. So that's what a blog is. You're writing about something that interests you. You can be anybody and you can be a blogger. Okay, anybody can write a blog. It essentially takes the form of a website, a web page, and you just throw out your opinions on the page. It can be informal. It doesn't have to be too formally structured. Okay. Whereas magazine articles tend to follow a certain structure, and they're written by journalists. And there will be some research, even if it is, for example, a celebrity magazine. There will have been some kind of a research done into what goes into the magazine. And here, I just thought there'd be a nice little joke about bloggers and how dedicated they are to blogging. Look at this UFO abducting this blogger. Blogger changes status to abducted by UFO. Okay, so this probably says quite a bit about people who actually start blogging. I think they're supposed to be quite dedicated, as you can see. Okay, let's have a little look down here. So today I wanted to look at a magazine article, and then we'll look at a blog, and we'll try and compare them. Now, if you're looking at this magazine article, it's on page 14 in both the 4th and 5th editions of the textbook. Right? So if you have your textbooks and you want to annotate as we're going along, you are more than welcome to. I've just taken a short extract from the magazine article, and the question itself says, read the article below from a Sunday newspapers magazine which concerns the death of a mountain climber. Okay, so we're looking at a Sunday newspapers magazine because sometimes newspapers will come with their own magazine that they publish. And usually if it's a Sunday newspaper magazine, it's things of interest, articles of interest, of common interest, okay? So this is about the death of a mountain climber, quite a serious topic. And here we have the image of the kind of mountain climbing these people would be doing. And with a heading, which is always in bold and stands out from the rest of the text. So when we talk about bold, I'm talking about how thick these letters look. It's in bold font. So let me just write that for you. Comment, go. Okay. This is bold font, right? Bold font. Okay, a rock and a hard place. So this is what headlines generally tend to do, or headings. They try to play on words. This idea of a rock and a hard place. Does anybody know where this saying comes from? You ever heard the expression, between a rock and a hard place? Somebody is caught between a rock and a hard place. You know where that comes from? Has quite ancient origins. See how well read you are? I'll give you 20 seconds to type the answer to that, okay? Okay, let me carry on while you're typing the answer. If you do know it, we'll come back to that. Let's look at the article itself. Oh, okay, here's a suggestion. It comes from Scotland, okay? It doesn't, but okay, that was a good guess. That was a good guess. What I mean is, sorry, I should be a bit more specific. Which famous piece of literature does it come from? Okay. Let's see. When we get to the end of the article, we'll come back to this question. Okay. All right. So, Alison Hargreaves faced the toughest decision of her career. It was August the 6th. She had spent, let me just make this a bit bigger for you. She had spent 6 weeks on K2, which is the name of the mountain. Okay. Good. Somebody has, okay, sorry. Something just caught my eye. The title comes from Greek mythology. Excellent. Yes, the Odyssey. Yes. Odysseus goes on his journeys. He's always battling against the gods. And at one point, he finds himself on a ship between a rock and a hard place, actually sort of kind of a monster that he has to choose which one he's going to deal with. The rock crashing his ship to pieces in a very stormy sea, or sort of sailing on towards the monster, which will also devour him. So that's why we say between a rock and a hard place. Good, excellent, guys. I'm so impressed. Now you'll have to go off and read the Odyssey, okay, in your spare time. Okay, let's get back to I must focus. All right. Alison Hargreaves faced the toughest decision of her career. It was August 6th. She had spent 6 weeks on K2 and had already failed in 2 summit bids to get to the top. Now, should she stay and give it one more try, or call it a day and go home? Some rhetorical questions. Okay, so this is quite a nice opening to the magazine article. It introduces facts, Alison Hargreaves, what she does, what this is going to focus on, this idea of her 6 weeks on K2, and whether she should give it a try again. Rhetorical questions are quite enticing. They sort of have an effect of being a cliffhanger. I'm punning here because look at the picture. It's a cliffhanger of sorts because we want to find out more. Can we answer these questions? Should she call it a day and go home? Or should she give it one more try? The situation was as bleak as could be. Alison was back at base camp, its cluster of red and yellow tents pitched unevenly among the ice and boulders of the Godwin-Austen Glacier. Towering 12,000 feet above was K2 itself, shrouded in grey wind-tossed clouds. It was bitterly cold and rainy, and, says the American climber Richard Selsey, Alison was in tears. By Selsey's account, Alison had changed her mind a dozen times. Now she was utterly torn. She wanted to fulfill her dream of climbing K2, adding it to Everest to become the only British woman to have reached the world's 2 highest summits. And she desperately wanted to be back with her children, Tom 6 and Kate 4. The previous night, she seemed to have made up her mind to leave. She had packed her equipment and said goodbye to the climbers who were staying. The porters were due to leave at 7 a.m. and Alison had booked a flight from Islamabad, and it carries on. You can read the rest of the article for yourself. Let's just say that it all ends in a tragedy, okay? Unfortunately for Alison. But, okay, so page 15 on the 5th edition is where this would carry on to. This is what a magazine article looks like. Look, it is in short, sharp paragraphs. It's in columns. It has that heading, and at the end of it, you would have probably the author's name. So you'd be given quite factual information as well. And this is the kind of thing that you would find in a magazine article along with a picture to entice you into the article. Now let's look at a blog. This is the kind of thing you would be looking at on a website page. Now, I should just point out that this idea of a blog is only explored in the 5th edition, not the 4th edition. But do not panic, because I strongly, strongly doubt that they would let you have an exam and include a blog question when you hadn't been given that in the textbook that is still relevant for this year's exam. 4th edition is still relevant for the first of this year's exam, for the June-July sitting, okay? And I think also for the September-October, I'll just have to double check that. So if you're worried about that, send me a message, okay? But I really strongly, highly doubt they will ask you to do a blog, you know, if it isn't in the textbook. But they've put it in the 5th edition for following exams to come in years ahead. So if you have the 5th edition, you have scored in a way, although I don't think this is a brilliant example of a blog. But anyway, that's just my opinion. So read the blog below about Alison Hargreaves' son, Tom Ballard, and this is on page 17 of the 5th edition. Remember, I've said to you that I will always try and include things in these live lessons that are not necessarily in the textbook if I come across them in the 5th edition, okay? So for those of you who are the 4th edition students, do not worry. So I've taken snippets out of this blog just to show you the kinds of style that it's in. Remember, keep this idea of informal writing in your mind. Tom Ballard is young. He's now 26 years old, and he was only 6 when his mother vanished on the Savage Mountain, age 33. The past winter, he managed to complete a great undertaking. He was the first man in history to solo climb in just one season the Alps 6 classic northern ascents. Okay, and it gives you all the ascents. We don't need to read every single one of them. His mother did the same, only it was in summer. It also almost seems like he's chasing her. Tom never plugged his accomplishment. He only shared a couple of pictures on his Facebook page, choosing not to widely publicize this historic undertaking. Let's look at the next section. Discreet, silent, humble. During one of the few interviews granted at the end of the climb, Tom Ballard said what many have been waiting to ask him for ages. He explained the relationship he had with his mother. I think a lot of people believe that by climbing, I am trying to get closer to my mother. This is not the case. I climb solely for me. That may seem selfish, but yes, solo climbing is one of the most selfish things you can do. I feel a deep connection to mountains that can't be explained. Something spiritual, perhaps. I want to climb them simply because they are there, and that's where I want to be. It's not for adrenaline or kicks. Alison would certainly agree with that. Okay, so we saw the magazine article in Alison and what she wanted to do, and I told you that it ended in tragedy. And this is her son who is continuing in this vein. And this section that they put, this extract they've put in the textbook, is adapted from Alessandro Benetton's blog, Each Time a Man. So he obviously has a blog, and this is one of the people he's spoken about or written about in his blog, okay? Let's have a look at what the textbook says about blogs. Bloggers write blogs to comment on the news, so comment on the news and other topics of general interest as an alternative information source to the mass media. Why is that important? Why should there be alternative information sources to the mass media, do you think? Pose me some suggestions. to the mass media, which are governed by the editorial principles of the official organization they represent. So you have to, in other words, make sure that your article conforms to the editorial rules of the company you are working for. And so that can be quite restrictive in a way. I'm just giving you a little hint about the answers that you might type as to why should there be alternative information sources for mass media. Anyway, continuing on this explanation. Because they are giving their personal and unofficial views in blogs, the content is not objective or even necessarily true. Style is often informal to the extent of not using sentences or of containing grammatical errors, as in this case. Right, so we'll have a look at these grammatical errors quickly to show you what they're talking about. Okay, we've had a suggestion here. Okay, so having alternative media, alternative information sources means that we can learn from different points of view. Good, yes, it's not just one point of view. Good. Also, sometimes maybe they'll pick up on stories that the media is not interested in, that has no commercial benefit or has no huge sort of relevance in terms of industry and business. Okay, so that can be quite nice. The nice thing about blogs or alternative information sources. Okay, so when it said to me that this blog contained grammatical errors, I really had to search for them, but it's essentially to do with sentence construction more than anything else. So if we look at this sentence, Tom Ballard is young, comma, he's now 26 years old, and he was only 6 when his mother vanished on the Savage Mountain, aged 33. This is a very long sentence, and you could break it up into sections. It's debatable whether this is a comma splice error, which some of you might have heard about. Okay, a comma splice error. You might have seen this in some of your assignments when you got them back. A comma splice error is when you connect two main clauses, two complete sentences, with a comma instead of a full stop, or instead of a semicolon, which creates a longer pause, or instead of a connective like and, or but, or something like that. Okay, so it's quite a common error to make. Tom Ballard is young, full stop. He's now 26 years old, and he was only 6 when his mother vanished on the Savage Mountain, age 33. This past winter, he managed to complete a great undertaking, and then it opens up the colon there, which shows that you're going to give more information, so that is good. He was the first man in history to solo climb in just one season the Alps 6 Classic Northern Ascent, and now here's another colon, and it's very strange to have a colon and then another colon in a sentence. You would generally only find one colon, so this needed to be broken up into 2 separate sentences. In fact, this part here, the past winter, he managed to complete a great undertaking. You could just have as a full stop or as a semicolon. He was the first man in history, etc., etc. Okay. And if you want to point out anything else, you're more than welcome to. And another nice thing about blogs is that people have the freedom to state their own opinions. Good, excellent, yes. I think blogging and actually the internet as a whole has had quite a big impact on the way that people think nowadays and the way they perceive things. So that freedom to give your own opinion is very important. You couldn't really do that in the past on such a public platform. Okay. Let's continue. His mother did the same, only it was in summer, and here we have a colon. It almost seems like he's chasing her. That's fine. Tom never plugged his accomplishment. That's quite informal, to plug something, to promote it. He only shared a couple of pictures. That's also quite casual sounding on his Facebook page, choosing not to widely publicize this historic undertaking. So I wouldn't say that this is as informal as a lot of blogs get. And at least things are spelt correctly. There might be a bit of contractions when you shorten words. So instead of I had spoken, she's having a difficult time, instead of she is having a difficult time, those kind of things. That tells you that it's more informal. Okay. And if you looked at that more closely, you'd find more of these kind of errors as you go along. I don't know if it's the greatest example of a blog, really, because it's adapted from somebody's blog, and we don't actually really get to see who Alessandra is in this. The focus is all on Alison's son, Tom Ballard. So I don't know, I just feel like they could have given a better example of a blog. That's just my opinion. Then on page 17 of the 5th edition, and page 19 of the 4th edition, there is a key point about informal written English, which is quite nice to look at. Informal letters, emails, and blogs tend to contain contractions, example, can't, okay, abbreviations, example, uni or probs, no probs. Phonetic spelling, example, highlights or quick. And colloquial or casual expression, example, no way, bunkers. As if the writer is speaking aloud to the recipient with whom he or she has a relationship. It is not appropriate to be this casual in many situations. Even if you are asked to write a letter to a relative, it is better to avoid slang, jargon, or non-sentences, write in full, complete sentences, and to write in paragraphs, as you need to demonstrate that you can write accurate and standard English. Okay? And I've only given you snippets of the blog. You'll see that it's actually quite a long text. It doesn't follow that column format that most magazines follow. And that's also another difference in terms of format and layout. So this is quite a nice point to keep in mind. Even if you have to rewrite something that is formal as an informal letter, or if they did ask you to write it as a blog, which I highly doubt, then you just remember to include some of these things, right? But don't get too casual. don't use slang and jargon, etc. Even though that these things generally do contain them. And then I decided to give you a little sample of something that is a blog written by a young adult. I'm not sure what age this person is, but they're not an adult. And the web address is www.thebrilliantchef.co.uk. And this is the culinary adventures of a kid who loves to cook. And this is the kind of thing that an individual would blog about. So their homepage, where they put all their blogs on, about them, what they do, and some of their recipes, for example, if this is what interests them. And look at the heading they've given this particular blog. They've given the blog a date, and then they've given it a title, chocolate tasting, exclamation mark. There's emotion. I love cocoa, and it's in, it's surrounded by quote marks, therefore it is the name of something, and it's got capital letters. We know it's a proper noun. It is a brand that they are referring to. Today I tasted some new chocolate that I hadn't tried before. It was called Love Cocoa. It was set up by someone who has the same surname as the famous Cadbury because he is from the same family. But he wanted to make nice quality chocolate and make it here in the UK. He also wanted it to be able to fit through the letterbox so that it can be sent as a gift, even when someone is not home to receive it. What strikes you about this paragraph? Do you think it's completely innocent? Is this really just about somebody coming across some chocolate? Is there something behind what's going on here? This Cadbury person, this chocolate that can be fit through a letterbox so you can get it anytime. What's actually going on there in this blog, do you think? Okay, I'm just going to continue. Branding, yes, it's branding. This blogger is probably being paid to promote this. They get a free sample and then they've got to put it on their blog, which means they might have quite a few followers. So that's how you can make money from blogging, just by the way, if you want to be bothered to do that. And then it continues on. The reason we were sent this chocolate is because my little sister, Miss T, won it in a Christmas competition. Oh, really? Because she loves to cook and made some chocolate snowman when we saw the recipe on Love Coco's Facebook page. Okay, so they justify why they're looking at the brand, but they'll still have been enticed in some way, I'm sure, to promote this brand. We were sent 4 varieties. My sister loved the milk chocolate one best, so she kept that all to herself. And look at all these exclamation marks, 3 in a row. You don't see that in magazine articles, okay? And then the page carries on. I just had to cut it into snippets here for our purpose of our exercise. And they show a nice image. So they've shown an image of the sister with her chocolate bar, looking very pleased. And then here is more chocolate, pictures of the chocolate. And there's a nice comment here that this opening paragraph doesn't necessarily sound like a child wrote it. Yeah, it's almost as if they've been given a few sort of hints and tips as to what to write, or somebody crafted it in a way. You're absolutely right. It's able to fit through the letterbox so that it can be sent as a gift when someone is not home to receive it. I mean, this is really trying to promote what this company is trying to do. So I do think they've had a bit of sort of coaching or something there. And then they go on to look at the different kinds of flavors, okay? Milk chocolate, Earl Grey, milk chocolate, Ecuador dark chocolate, etc., etc. And then they give their opinion. And they'll give a few facts as well, 70% dark cocoa, whatever it is, and then try to make things sound enticing. They have big capitalized words that stand out to draw your eye to it. So this is the kind of thing that you'll find in blogs, particularly sponsored blogs, blogs that you know, companies want to approach and get their product promoted. I see it's 9:30. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.